There are names, not engraved on grand stone tablets, not standing tall in glorious squares, but carved deeply into the heart of the motherland and in the memory of history. This is the story of four souls who walked through the fiery days of the Lam Son Uprising, each with a different fate, a different end, but all sharing one word: loyalty. Lalai, the man who died in another's place. When the Ming army surrounded Mount Qilin, death lurked behind every tree and rock. Lalai, the silent general, didn't hesitate. He put on Laloi's imperial robe, mounted an elephant, and charged into enemy lines like a blazing storm, a decoy for the survival of the army. He knew he would not return, but he went anyway. And history, no matter how forgetful, could never erase the name: Lasat, a brilliant general lost in the shadows of power. He was Laloi's right hand, once wielding great military power, bearing half the country on his shoulders. But after the enemy was gone, the king passed away, and the throne left to a child. Lasat, once the most trusted, fell into the intoxication of power, and the very hand that once lifted him up signed his execution order. From a national hero to a condemned man, the distance was just a single nod from the throne. Dinh Liet, the wall of justice amid treacherous times. When others stayed silent before a usurper, he stood tall. When the order between king and subject was broken, he raised his sword to restore it. Dinh Liet, once a Lam Son resistance general, became the guardian of legitimacy, helping Lê Thánh Tông ascend the throne, ushering in a prosperous era. He did not need many words. He only needed history to remember him as someone who stood for what was right. Tran Nguyen Han, a talent destroyed by fear. He was a descendant of Tran Hung Dao, carrying the blood of legendary strategists. He gave his mind and strength to build Laloi's kingdom. But suspicion crept in. In the dark corners of courtly politics, thick with mistrust, he didn't defend himself. He didn't argue. He chose death to protect his honor. A mighty eagle, killed not by arrows, but by poisonous winds. In every nation's heart, there are people like these. Not all end in glory. Not all are praised with the drums of the court, but their blood, their loyalty, their silent sacrifice are what watered the soil that helps this nation stand tall. The man who died in place of his king. There are names that history must bow its head to upon being spoken. In all of Vietnamese history, few deaths are commemorated with a personal memorial day, celebrated even before the kings. Few men, even as they drew their last breath on enemy soil, left behind a legacy so deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. To die so the Lord may live, to die so a great cause may survive. His name was Lê Lai, a man who cared nothing for fame, a man whose name isn't adorned with dazzling victories like other generals, but he wrote his own legend in blood, in one fateful moment, trading his life for the fate of an entire nation. The fateful night at Qilin Mountain, spring 1418. The Lam Son Uprising was on the brink of collapse. Lê Lai and his forces were surrounded by Ming troops at Qilin Mountain. Every path was perilous, every escape sealed. The last meal was eaten, arrows ran out, and despair crept into men's hearts. Death lingered on every tree and rock. The enemy tightened its siege, desperate to capture Lê Lai. In that hopeless hour, one man stepped forward. No one ordered him. No one called his name. It was Lê Lai, emerging from the shadows. He said, "Let me take the Lord's place, wear the royal robe, ride the elephant, and lure the enemy away so the others may escape." Lê Lai stood frozen. He grasped his closest friend's hand. No tears fell, but his heart clenched tight. Lê Lai smiled, light as the wind, heavy as fate. Donning the robe, mounting the elephant, charging into death. Lê Lai put on the fake royal robe, mounted the war elephant, and led a small force straight into the enemy's grasp. He shouted aloud, declaring himself Lê Lai. The Ming troops, like moths to flame, rushed toward him. On that elephant's back, Lê Lai wasn't just fighting. He was sacrificing, stepping through the jaws of death to carve a bloody path for his comrades, for a nation's dream of freedom. In the end, he collapsed and was captured alive. The enemy soon discovered the truth and tortured him savagely. But Lê Lai said nothing. He took on every accusation in place of his lord, in place of his brothers, and he died, silent and unyielding, on foreign soil, a living statue of loyalty. A friend never forgotten. Years passed. The rebellion succeeded. Lê Lai became emperor, and the country was freed from foreign rule. Among thousands of generals and heroes, one name was always mentioned first: Lê Lai. Emperor Lê Lợi issued a royal decree. Every year on the 21st first day of the 8th lunar month, a ceremony must be held to honor Lê Lai before even my own Memorial Day. A soldier, a friend, a shadow that vanished into the dark night, forever etched in the king's heart and in the memory of history. Lê Lai, a name that needs no statue yet lives forever. He needs no lavish tomb, no glittering medal, just a single story of a man who chose death not because fate demanded it, but because he willed it. That alone is enough to bring tears to generations. This was Lê Lai, the man who died in place of his king, a silent flame, yet one that lit the path to a nation's liberation. The man who held the flag high. Not every man who defends a country wields a sword. There are hands unstained by blood, yet they carry the weight of an entire nation. When speaking of the Lam Son Uprising, people often remember the glorious battles, the generals who charged into the fray. But behind every battle stands a mind, a steady hand holding the line, directing troops, preserving unity, shaping the future. Among them, the name Lê Sat is one that history cannot forget. From comrade to elder statesman of a dynasty, Lê Sat from Tauc Xuân was one of the first to answer Lê Lợi call to arms. He wasn't known for bold heroics on the battlefield, but he was steadfast, careful, and absolutely loyal. He stood by Lê Lợi like a shadow, not through flames of combat, but with unwavering presence during the darkest hours of the uprising. From the days when Lam Son was surrounded to the fall of Dong Quan, from the hardships of mountain warfare to the halls of the royal court, Lê Sat never once left Lê Lợi side. Serving Emperor Lê Thái Tổ, building a nation from ashes. When the Ming were driven out and Lê Lợi took the throne, the Lê So dynasty was officially born. The country lay in ruins. War had stripped it bare. Lê Lợi needed people with wisdom, integrity, and political strength. He chose Lê Sat as one of his closest advisors. Lê Sat wasn't a hero on the battlefield, but he was the one who built the rear guard. He preserved order, appointed capable people, suppressed internal unrest, and handled the aftermath of war. The throne may not shine like armor, but it is where the unprepared fall the deepest. Regent to a young king, power meets trial. After Lê Lợi death, the crown passed to Lê Thái Tông, a boy of just 11. In that critical moment, as a child ascended the throne amidst political storms, who would guide the nation? Lê Sat was appointed Grand Regent. He did not decline. He accepted it as a duty and a burden, and he fulfilled it. For many years, the country remained stable. The court stood strong. The young king was safe. But with great power comes growing suspicion. Rumors of authoritarianism spread. Tensions within the court deepened. Eventually, the very king he had protected no longer trusted him. The fall of a nation builder, the tragedy of a loyal minister. In 1438, once Lê Thái Tông came of age, he ordered Lê Sat's arrest for abuse of power. No torture, no prolonged trial, a single decree, execution. Lê Sat died, a quiet death for a man who had once carried the fate of the nation. He offered no resistance, no justification, no curse before the executioner. Because perhaps he understood the law of power. Because perhaps he knew history would not forget. The one who held the banner through the darkness. If Lê Lợi lit the flame with his blood, then Lê Sat was the one who held the flag aloft through the long nights when no one else stood in front. Not every death is a tragic epic, but some lives, even when ending in injustice, shine with the glory of years devoted to service. A cornerstone of the earliest days of the later Lê dynasty. A name that needs no praise because history cannot look away. A lifetime of loyalty. There are those who do not choose death to make their name. They choose to live to remain loyal to the very end. To live and protect the banner of righteousness through storms of shifting thrones and political tides. Dinh Liet is not a name often told in fiery legends. He did not die young, nor create a tragic moment like Lê Lợi. But he lived, and lived fully to the very end, with unwavering faith. From the forests of Lam Son to the battlefield of Dong Quan. Dinh Liet, a native of Nghe, joined Lê Lợi early in the uprising. He and his father, Dinh Lê, were both renowned generals, with the Battle of Tot Dong, Chuk Dong marking a pinnacle of their military careers. Not only was he skilled in command, he was wise, politically astute, knowing when to advance, when to yield, when to endure for the greater cause. When the Lam Son army took Dongquan, the Ming's final stronghold, Dinh Liet was entrusted with pacifying the remnants, winning over hearts and keeping Hathain from descending into chaos after victory. Not retreating to seclusion, but continuing to serve the nation. Unlike many generals who returned to their hometowns after the war, Dinh Liet stayed. He continued to serve the later kings after Lê Thái Tổ during the turbulent periods of the Lê Dynasty. He, along with Nguyen Si, quelled Lê Nghi Dun's coup and helped bring Lê Thanh Tông, one of Vietnam's greatest emperors, to the throne. Lê Thanh Tông deeply respected Dinh Liet, naming him Grand General and entrusting him with major decisions. Even in his twilight years, he did not retire or seek luxury. He remained devoted, quelling rebellions, preserving the kingdom, and keeping the court steady. His final uprising, once again choosing justice. In 1501, after waves of instability, the Lê Dynasty began to fracture. Lê Uy Muk, a young and depraved, violent king, came to power. Though already old, Dinh Liet could not close his eyes and stay silent. Once more, he rose, not for himself, but for the fate of the nation. He secretly gathered forces, planning a revolt to overthrow the cruel king and restore rightful order. But the plot was uncovered. He was arrested, and for the first time in his life, faced the charge of treason. Loyal to his final breath, Dinh Liet was executed, but he did not protest. He did not regret. He knew he had chosen right. Though wrong in the eyes of the law, he was right by heaven and by the people. Looking back, history never called him a traitor. They called him a man loyal until the end, a general who did not fall to arrows or spears, but to the weight of the word loyalty. His name outlived every throne. No grand temple, no lavish tomb, but Dinh Liet's name was carved into stone, told in folk songs, and remembered by the righteous. A man who lived through 3 reigns, yet held one steadfast heart. A mirror of virtue, loyal but not blind, righteous but not extreme. A light cast in doubt, Tran Nguyen Han. Not all those who are brilliant end with glory. There are lights, too bright, too soon, that attract the envy of darkness. There are people who don't die for their mistakes, but because they were too right, too dangerous to others. One of the rare civil-military prodigies at the dawn of the Lam Son Uprising, a celebrated general, nephew of scholar Nguyen Dan. He carried the spirit of the fallen Tran dynasty and pledged unshakable loyalty to the great cause of Lê Lợi. A talented soul amidst the forests of Lam Son. From a young age, Tran Nguyen Han was renowned for his vast knowledge, deep understanding, and mastery of both the pen and the sword. When the Lam Son rebellion began, he didn't seek a commanding seat behind curtains. He went to battle. He led. He charged. He won. In major battles like Tot Dong, Chuk Dong, and countless clashes with the Ming army, his name stood among the top commanders. Not only did he fight well, he strategized even better, crafting pivotal plans that turned the tide of the uprising. Lê Lợi trusted him, named him Grand General, and entrusted him with great responsibilities in the court. From glorious heights to a return home. When peace returned to the land, Tran Nguyen Han requested to retire to his homeland. He lived in seclusion, taught students, planted trees, wore simple robes, and distanced himself from politics. People thought he sought retreat, but in truth, he stayed away from the whirlpool of power. He knew well, the closer one stands to the throne, the easier it is to die by the shadow one casts in another's light. He withdrew, but suspicion, the darkness of doubt. One day, Lê Lợi received a secret report. Tran Nguyen Han was plotting rebellion. No clear evidence, no concrete actions, only someone said so. Perhaps because he was too gifted. Perhaps because he stood out too much and bore the bloodline of the beloved Tran dynasty. Perhaps because he had retreated and people fear what they cannot control. Lê Lợi, the one who once trusted him most, ordered his arrest. He did not resist. He did not flee. On the road to the capital, he took his own life. A death cold as ice in a time of peace. No one knows what last words he left behind. No record remains of a final message. But the people remember. He died because he was too talented, and because that talent no longer belonged to the court. No monument was raised that day. No honors were immediately granted. Only a lonely grave, an unnamed silence in official records, and a lingering sorrow in the hearts of the just. History may fall silent, but the people do not. Years later, historians and scholars all came to agree. The death of Tran Nguyen Han was a painful loss, an unjust end for a man who should have been honored. Perhaps Lele regretted it, but it was too late, because some losses can't be repaid with titles or stone. Tran Nguyen Han, a silent monument to wisdom and loyalty. He stands as one of the clearest testaments. Loyalty can be destroyed but never forgotten. Talent can be envied but never buried. A solitary, noble, and loyal soul in a chaotic era, died like a falling star. But his light still shines in history and in the hearts of the people. There are names that are not carved into grand stone monuments, that are not enshrined in glorious public squares, but are etched deeply into the soil of the motherland and the memory of history. Lelai, the man who died in place of another. In one moment, riding an elephant into enemy lines, he traded his life for the survival of the entire army. He left without complaint, but left behind an unwritten will of absolute sacrifice, forever honored by generations. Lê Sat, the elder who built the dynasty. Not a prominent figure on the battlefield, yet the one who shouldered the fate of a fragile empire. From loyal aide to regent of a child king, he reached the very limit of loyalty. Though he died under suspicion, history still calls him a foundational pillar. Dinh Liet, the man who lived a lifetime of loyalty. From a fierce general to a devoted statesman guarding the throne, he stood as a vivid image of unwavering faith through shifting times. Though executed for rising against a tyrant, his death was a continuation of loyalty, not its end. Tran Nguyen Han, the gifted general wrongly accused, a man of wisdom, courage, and virtue, yet passed in silence. He did not die because he was wrong, but because he was too brilliant, too radiant, too threatening to those who ruled by shadows. His death remains a deep regret of a dynasty and a lasting lesson on the price of political suspicion. 4 people, 4 destinies, one common word: loyalty. Loyal to their country, loyal to their cause, loyal to their conscience, until the very last breath. They may have fallen, but they laid the foundation of a dynasty. They may not have been honored in their time, but history will always seek justice. And every time a Vietnamese soul looks back to the roots, they will see their silhouettes, simple yet upright, standing quietly amid the pages of a history that never fades.